Welcome to DNF. I'm Jessica Spatana. He's Spencer Hall. We are back after the Singapore Grand Prix, and I am standing in front of all of Manhattan right now, like King Kong stomping around, just a giant person. We're having fun, Spencer.
1,000-foot Jessica Smetana. Currently crying tears like the rest of us because we may have watched the end of an era, Jessica. I know.
Start with this. This
we're
is
gonna
a sad place to start.
It's okay. DNF is a safe space. We're going to let people in, okay? This is an express edition of DNF, so we're going to cry real fast. Just cry as fast as you can because Daniel Ricciardo is going to get your speed tears on. The interview after the Singapore GP, an emotional moment for him. If we could take a look at that.
What was kind of running through your mind, because you don't normally do that, and I mean, ultimately, what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, a lot of emotions because look, I'm aware it could be it, and yeah, I think it's also just exhausted after the race. So there's so much, I don't know, just like a flood of many emotions and feelings and exhaustion, and the cockpit is something that I got very very used to for many years, and yeah, just wanted to savor the moment.
All right, well, I hope you see you at Austin, Daniel.
Thank you.
All right, see you later.
Spencer, I don't know if he's going to be back or not, but that video made me sad.
It made me very sad because for all of the complaints about his wandering kind of roundabout career, for all of the disappointments and turns and downturns that he had, overall, Daniel Ricciardo, positive influence on the sport. Like, I don't think you'll have too many people disagree with that.
That was what a lot of the drivers were saying after the race. So again, we don't really know for sure if this was his last race, although it would be really awkward and maybe a little funny if it wasn't. And if he was in fact at the US Grand Prix after the standing ovation he got in the paddock after he got out of his car. But everyone was saying there's not a lot of people that have anything negative to say about him. And I think that stands for F1 fans as well. He was sort of like the star of Drive to Survive. We've talked about him as, America's driver, Daniel Ricciardo. He's always very funny and witty and charming and has a lot of fans. And so if that was it, kind of sad. I wish he had been able to race through the rest of the season. I understand that time is precious in F1, and if you have a younger driver, you want to give them as many opportunities as possible in actual race settings to see what they have. I understand that, but It did kind of make me sad. And so, but I think Spencer also fitting that he went out with a little bit of controversy, getting the fastest lap at the end of the race.
I love that everyone immediately saw him getting tires to go for fastest lap of the race and said, "Oh, what a tribute to Daniel. What good on them for giving the lad one last thing." And then the realization sunk in. Oh, they're trying to take a point off McLaren.
He's cheating. Cheating. Everyone just started wait a second.
Wait a minute.
But he's
We're being cooked.
Yeah. He's not, they're not cheating per se, right? I think there's this weird unspoken, maybe sometimes spoken relationship between the Red Bull teams that they say one thing and then they kind of do the other thing and everyone's mad about it, but there's nothing anyone can do about it. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of really angry McLaren fans that didn't like that Daniel Ricciardo took the point away from Lando Norris at the end of the race and felt that it was a, vast Red Bull conspiracy to make sure Max wins the Drivers' Championship. And in fact, at the end of the race on Max's radio, they told him, "Your old pal got fastest lap." And he said, "Thank you, Daniel."
Thank
and then
you,
they
Daniel.
Also, Spencer, they're making jokes after the race where Daniel was like, if he wins the Drivers' Championship by more than 1 point, I should get a really nice Christmas present. So I don't know, what's going on here?
I can show you how it works. No. We don't do any colluding with RB at all in terms of race strategy. Give Daniel the fastest lap so we can take a point off him. Okay, cool. That's how they do it. And I don't know if McLaren's mad about it. Maybe it's time to start Team MC. Maybe it's time to start Team Papaya. Maybe it's time to go ahead, buy up another team, start that junior league, because until we get some sort of ruling from the FIA, and boy, don't we want another one of those, that you can't do this, and until the other teams can't tolerate it, we're going to have to go ahead and let Red Bull and RB end up working together. There's a fine line between what you would call strategic and what you would call unfair. And right now, Red Bull would say that was a piece of unintentional strategy, and everyone else knows exactly what it is.
The fine line between strategic and unfair is, in fact, how I would describe Formula One to a new fan. Because that's really all it is. Okay, before we stop talking about Daniel, I wanted us to listen to Ted Kravitz doing his like little sign off on Sky Sports. Just one more tearjerker before we stop.
Thank you for that smile. Thank you for the shoeies. Thanks for I Never Left. Thanks for that gorgeous nose of his. Thanks for coming into the paddock on that horse in Austin. Thanks for the Enchante merch. Thanks for the red wine. Thanks for those cowboy boots that he wears sometimes. Thanks for licking the stamp and sending it. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for being a gentleman. And thank you for being a proper great Aussie drongo bloke. Daniel Ricciardo, we love you. If this is it, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ted.
we don't give enough credit for Ted, because all he does, if you've seen him on race weekend, and you and I have both seen him because we've both been back in the paddock, all he does is wander around with a set of headphones, right? A pair of cargo shorts,
a little notepad,
and a little notepad.
Yes.
And that man makes an entire universe for the listener or the viewer just walking around with a notepad and talking into a mic. It's him talking to the world. And in that case, what a beautiful tribute. And bringing up a point about Daniel Ricciardo that I would like to make moving forward about Liam Lawson, someone who came from outside of the general sphere of F1 influence, somebody who came from a literal and figurative long way, a racer from Australia who represented them well. Liam Lawson, a Kiwi, not exactly a wellspring of F1 talent or those who might benefit from F1's sort of like circles of power. Red Bull really sort of going outside of the typical envelope in terms of driver recruiting in both cases. Not as far as they should or could go, but still worth noting that, hey, you did Australia well, and hopefully Liam Lawson will do New Zealand proud moving forward.
Yeah. Insert photo of me and Ted at the Miami Grand Prix here, Doug and Harry. Yeah. Love Ted, love Ted's notebook, love Ted's podcast, the Thursday of race weeks. It's a must listen if you're an F1 fan. He does like a little like wraparound thing with all the drivers in their press conferences, which is a segue to talk about something that happened in a driver's press conference before the race. Spencer, we haven't yet even discussed the race. Lando Norris won. That's a secondary storyline here to Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen having pretty weird weekends. And do you want to tell us what happened with Max this weekend?
So Max was fined by the FIA for cussing, what you might call cursing or profanity over the radio, which is, this is where we're supposed to say, oh, we present, you decide. No, this is stupid. It is extremely, extremely stupid. I do not know why a regulatory body like the FIA wants to stick its head up any more than is necessary, because there is one point where we go, okay, the FIA is here to provide rules and to govern the sport, to provide a framework. Cool. Go ahead and do that. Manners really shouldn't be part of that. Manners, like everything that happens on the radio, is driving business, and everyone who's watching knows that. So why on earth are you going to single out Max Verstappen for profanity? Which, by the way, I will say this as a Yuki Tsunoda fan, if we were going to fine anyone for this, if we were going to come down on anyone for this, it probably should have been Yuki Tsunoda like 30 times. Easy. But I'm not a snitch, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is say that this is stupid, and it probably has something to do with politics that we don't particularly understand happening behind the scenes, because otherwise, why would you do it when everyone else does it?
Yeah, I thought it was really stupid. And I also thought that the president of the FIA, Ben Sulayem, said that we have to differentiate between our sport, motorsport, and rap music. We're not rappers, They say the F word how many times per minute? We are not on that. That's them and we are us. And then Lewis Hamilton said that, quote, I don't like how he expressed that. Saying rappers is very stereotypical. If you think about it, most rappers are black, so it says we are not like them. That's the wrong choice of words, and there's a racial element here. I think good on Lewis. Of course, Lewis is always the one who's calling out the FIA when they make comments like this that have pretty explicit like racial undertones to them. So yeah, that was a sort of weird side note to this whole weekend. And Max, I think, handled it pretty well. So this was how he responded in his next press conference after this whole debacle with him saying the F word on Thursday.
Did you change overnight? Because it seems there's been a big difference in performance lately.
A lot.
Can you elaborate in terms of what you've done?
No, I might get fined or get an extra day. So.
Well, look, are you confident, Max, with the race pace?
Maybe.
I mean, how much of a step into the unknown is the race, given the problems you had yesterday in practice?
It's an unknown. Yeah.
Tell us about lining up
This
along.
is not towards you, don't worry.
Okay.
I don't want to upset you.
Okay, one last thing. We saw what happened in the news conference. We know what's gone on with you in the FIA. Do you think they've shown inadequate leadership in this? Are you making a kind of statement by how you've reacted in the news conference today?
For my, it's just ridiculous to get a penalty for that. You know, these kind of things. For me, I think when you insult someone, that's pretty clear. I didn't even aim it at a person. It's a bit of a slip of the tongue moment. It's in the rules, you know. Honestly, like, this is not even to the stewards, because they are just bound to a rule book. And I actually had a great chat with them about it. You know, they are very understanding, but it's in the rules and they have to apply something. But yeah, for me, it's not the right way to go forward in our sport.
Jessica, the part in there that really amused me was when he said that he was at the stage in his career where he doesn't want to be dealing with this all the time. It's really tiring. He's 26.
Yeah.
He's 26 and he's saying things like, yeah, you know, just at this stage in my
too
career.
old for this.
My friend, wait till you have to take the garbage out when you're 48. Like, that's what I'm saying. This is hilarious to me that this is, I understand he's frustrated. The organization and bureaucracy around him is stupid and they're doing something stupid for no reason. However, I did laugh a little bit. It's you know, it's funny.
I mean,
it's like when your kid says, oh, I've done so much today, and you're like, it's 3:00. It's 3:00,
right,
and I know you had a field trip today, right?
They like sentenced him to like community service. And so the funny part also is that after this, Max gave reporters like one-on-one, well, not one-on-one, but he gave reporters time with him outside of the press conference setting. So he still ended up like doing a lot of media. He just didn't do it in sort of like the F1 setting. And so, yeah, it just seemed like it was a running joke the whole weekend where drivers would make comments or say like a swear word and then they'd be like, oh no, you're gonna have to serve time with Max Verstappen, don't say that. And so it just feels like there's this openly mocking the FIA, which is not great if you're the FIA, because again, like, why are you putting your foot down about this now? Like, what prompted this? It's like the season's almost over, there's 6 races left, and now you're suddenly gonna put the hammer down on someone for saying the F word. And again, like, it's so silly to me. I understand that people have different like comfort levels with profanity. I am unbothered by profanity. It really is not something that I clutch my pearls over, because I use a lot of profanity, Spencer. And if I were driving a car 200 miles an hour for my job and then talking about it after, I would be using even more profanity. So it feels very silly.
It is absurd. I think the word that Max used to describe his car and an accurate word to describe the situation would be the same, and that's fucked. It's a fucked situation.
It
and
is,
FIA,
it is indeed.
go ahead and find my ass, because no one cares. Also, don't do this if you're the regulatory, committee organization overseeing a sport. Don't ever stick your head up when you don't have to, because you know what you're there to do? Take checks. That's what you're there to do. You're there to be a sports bureaucracy, okay? Quietly taking up office space in Paris and taking your checks for doing next to nothing. That's what your job is. Continue to do your non-job and let the serious people do the work. Can you tell I cover college football, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell you're like, yeah. What do you do with the NCAA?
The funny thing too about Max being like, I'm too old for this in the context of college football is like, there's like 7 transfer quarterbacks that are the same age as him that are like very much in sort of the middle stage of their careers probably. But yeah, like F1 it's such a funny sport because so many of them are so young, and yet he is a very accomplished and like almost veteran presence in the paddock. But yeah, I thought the whole swearing thing was very silly. If your kids are watching F1 and are profoundly disturbed by F words, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But there's I don't know, isn't there an F1 kids broadcast? Like if it's in a press conference too, where are children even finding that unbleeped? I don't know.
What child is like, you know what? I need the additional material. Give me the press
watch
conference.
a press conference.
You know,
Yeah. Who watches press conferences?
Those kids are cool though, because they're there for some of the people we know, right? They're there like, I need to hear what Lawrence Edmondson's going to ask, and you're like, that's right. All our Nate Saunders heads out there, right?
Right.
I need to hear what Elizabeth Blackstock is going to ask them. Yeah, that's right. That's right, kids. Geek out.
In conclusion, Michael Jordan meme, fuck them kids.
Yeah, fuck them kids. We have a couple of other race notes I do want to cover just very briefly. Amazing how good McLaren is. Just astonishing.
Buddy.
Continue to be leagues and leaps beyond everyone else. Lando even clipped a wall and suffered some front wing damage and still ended up winning by 20 seconds. And so dominant that Verstappen said, I had a race just by myself.
Yeah. I think 52 points right now. That is the gap between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Hopefully, I mean, it would be kind of funny if the championship came down to that one lost point from Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know. There is also some like poetry to him screwing over a team that dropped him last year, like midway through, or 2 years ago, midway through the season in McLaren, to help out his old team / half of his current team, however you want to do the math on RB and Red Bull. But it's close. It's pretty close. And like we said, there's 6 races left, 3 sprint races, I believe, which have points implications as well. If Lando wins all the races and Max comes in second, I think Max will win. I think that's how the numbers shake out. I haven't done that math myself, but that's pretty close. And as we know, this weekend, Ferrari and Mercedes were not as big of a factor. They didn't perform very well in qualifying. I don't know why Lewis Hamilton was on soft tires in the race. I guess maybe they thought there was a safety car happening because there usually is, but there
usually
wasn't.
is in Singapore. Yeah. And they just never got one, I believe. I think this is the first time it's been run without a safety car at all. So not an absurd assumption on their part, but hard race for them. Didn't really have their strategy down. Certainly didn't have their tire strategy down. And after the race, no media availability for either Hamilton or for Russell because heat exhaustion.
They were so hot.
Rough, man. Singapore is rough.
It did appear very rough. Like they were like stumbling around after and looked so miserable. But in a more sort of normal weekend, Max isn't going to be just competing with the McLaren. He's going to be competing with some speedy Ferraris and some speedy Mercedes. So they're not going to finish 1-2 every race for the end of the season. And this is a very, very real title fight now. This is something that, I don't know, 2 months ago, Spencer, we couldn't have even dreamed of because it looked like Red Bull was so much faster than the McLaren. But now with Lando finishing a race 20 seconds ahead, even with the mistakes that he made, Max had to have his absolute best race to finish second. And he did. And you can count on him to do that. But it's still not fast enough. It's still not faster than the McLaren.
Actual sentence we can say right now here, recording on September 24th, 2024, which is that it would have to require a serious comeback by Red Bull to catch McLaren, currently leading them 516 points to 475 for Red Bull Racing. The constructors, given current performance, all but sewn up for McLaren, Mercedes. Drivers' Championship, of course, right now, Verstappen at 331. Lando Norris behind him at 279. I can't believe I'm saying this either, which is anything can happen. Like this is did not expect that because I thought
there's some good races coming too.
Yeah, no, there are some extremely good races on the schedule coming up. We have next up the North American Classic, which is the United States Grand Prix. in Austin, Texas. Love this track. Love this race. Love this environment. It is usually we get a good sunset lap. Oh, sunset lap at it's just fantastic in Austin. Followed up by Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi.
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, no, an insane lineup of races, an insane lineup of potential outcomes that we're facing, approximately 3,000 times better than I thought we would be getting back.
And also, thank God, because the Singapore race was not
nope.
It was not the most exciting of Sunday mornings for us here on the East Coast. And there's bound to be a couple more snooze fests later in the season, at least maybe one. But the points, they matter, Spencer. And the qualifyings are going to get more and more and more tense.
What are we going to do if Red Bull wins by 1 point? Or if Verstappen wins by 1 point?
It's going to be so complicated for all of the Daniel Ricciardo stands and the McLaren stands, and then the Red Bull haters, of which there are many. Also, ironically, not among them, Zak Brown, who, I don't know if you saw the picture of him with Christian Horner, looked like they caught a flight back to Heathrow or Milton Keynes, wherever
in their little jammies. Yeah.
And matching jammies, yeah, and like it very strange. I don't know why he posted that. We'll put it up on the screen if you're watching at home. But a weird détente between those two coming home from this race. Just because I think probably one of them needed a ride, and it was probably Zak Brown, and the condition was probably you have to post this picture of us in our matching jammies.
Yeah, we're going to have to wear matching jammies. Fine, Christian.
I really don't want to wait for tomorrow for my 17-hour flight.
17-hour flight. All the way back to England. Fine.
London to Singapore is the longest long-haul flight in the world, correct?
I believe it's New York to Singapore is longer, but we're quibbling. 16 to 18 hours, I believe, is the framework. Yeah.
Have you ever been in a plane that long?
I have been in a plane. I have been in a What's your longest flight?
New York to Johannesburg, and they
that's a bear.
They effed up the first approach on the landing, so we had to do like a 40-minute circle back around to Johannesburg, and that was the worst part of the whole flight because we were so close, Spencer. We were so close.
You can see it.
You could almost see it. We were like in a low cloud, which is probably why they screwed up the approach, but oh my God, it was so long. And obviously like sitting in coach with my knees like in my chest for the entire flight. It was unpleasant. The way home might have been worse though, because I had like food poisoning, so unpleasant.
The longest flight I have been on without food poisoning, blessedly enough, was Auckland to Houston, or Houston to Auckland.
Oh my God, that is far.
I've done that, but that was only 13 hours and 20 minutes. So even then,
add on 3 more hours.
Yeah, if you added on 3 or 4 more hours, that's what we're talking about from Singapore to London. Poor babies, they had to fly private.
Oh no. Oh, their seats recline so far that they're like, instead of like the 180-degree seats, they're like 200-degree seats. They're like inverted somehow.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'm too comfortable. How am I going to sleep with all this silence?
Oh man, must be nice. Yeah, F1. What other sport are you gonna get two enemies being frenemies to hitch a ride home back to the UK? Probably only this one.
Yeah, in the name of cutting your 17-hour. Yeah, I don't want to hear anything about that road trip. All right, that NFL road trip from like LA to New York, right? Like, oh, the Jets went so far. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, the Chargers were like, we're gonna stay on the East Coast because we have to go from Pittsburgh to Charlotte, and we're gonna pack Monopoly board games so the players don't get bored. It's like, please, you couldn't fly back to LA.
Yeah,
please.
I'm gonna quote Liam Lawson last year in Las Vegas. Liam Lawson on Kiwi time, working on England time, stuck on Vegas time. Hi Liam, how are you? And he goes, I don't know.
Relatable.
Yeah.
Excited to have him in the paddock, even though it's at the expense of our Australian friend.
sunrise and sunset. This has been DNF, a Formula One podcast. I'm Spencer Hall. That was Jessica Smetana. Again, subscribe, rate us, like us, do all of the things to indicate how much you love both of us. Or we'll be forced to hit you with the famous Michael Jordan quote. Just fuck them kids. We need you.
So long, friends.